to today about the digitalization of the energy market, something that paves the way towards increasing renewables on the grid and serving customers and the planet better. But before I get into that, I wanted to introduce myself and Citizens Advice. So hello, my name is Rajni Nair and I'm a Senior Policy Researcher at Citizens Advice. Citizens Advice is the statutory consumer advocate in the energy market for Great Britain, which means we're paid to represent energy consumers. We're an organisation that has that responsibility, but we also help millions of people every year by providing independent and impartial advice on almost all types of problems, from housing to debt. So, in 2019, we helped 1 million people with energy advice, and we use that data we collect on people's problems to solve systemic issues in the market and anticipate challenges in a future one. So, moving on to digitalization. Digitalization is a very broad term, and the implications are even broader. It can instigate new revenue streams and business models, change the way that we serve customers, and how we use energy assets. Unlocking this potential innovation requires a number of actions. So it could be installing smart meters, using energy data well, innovating, setting standards, and also engaging consumers. And something that sits beneath all of this is the regulation and consumer protection that needs to keep pace with changes in the market. So it's important to note that not all of these actions need to occur in a linear fashion, though all the steps will undoubtedly be needed. So for example, you might need to set standards to unlock that innovation and remove uncertainty for businesses. Or you might see that innovation happens far faster than the rollout of smart meters within a particular country. So at this point, I plan to talk through some of the learnings from the British market. And first up are learnings from the British rollout of smart meters. This rollout was led by privately owned energy companies, coordinated by the government and enforced through energy sector regulations. So the rollout has been beset with delays and technical problems, and the delays came with the formation of the National Data Communications Company, known as the DCC, becoming fully operational. So this is the body that enables smart meters to be interoperable with different energy suppliers. And many of those problems are starting to be resolved or have been fully resolved, although there are still some difficulties with a full and consistent coverage of that communications network. One of the main challenges after the DCC was fully operational included companies having different interpretations of technical requirements, which again presented another challenge and another delay. So a supplier-led rollout also saw some difficulties with consumer engagement, with some suppliers failing to sell the benefits of smart meters to some consumers. To address this, the government had begun trying to do some localised and coordinated campaigns before the pandemic, which seemed to be going well. Having said all of this, our research suggests people have, when they have a smart meter installed, 8 in 10 like them and like the experience of the installation, even when the process has gone wrong, and that's partially due to some of the strong protections that are in place. So the installation of smart meters unlocks more granular data, and this is classed as personal data because you can infer details about people from their usage patterns. So having appropriate protections in place is really important and is key to giving people confidence. And about 60% of the people that we surveyed felt reassured by the additional protections in the smart meter data access and privacy framework. The energy data is not just usage data, There's also data about the infrastructure and how people interact with that infrastructure. And in the past, it's not always been easy to access this type of data. So one of the recommendations by the Energy Data Task Force was to make non-personal data presumed open, with the onus on companies to explain why that data hasn't been made available. So this is really important to unlock innovation. There are many business models that are being trialled that are only possible with the information that digital technologies give. For example, selling an outcome as a service. So you might want 21 degrees in your bedroom instead of buying the units of electricity that are required to get that outcome. And many trials are finding that these new models are technically feasible. The energy regulator in Great Britain is also trying to enable innovation by using anticipatory regulation techniques. For example, having an innovation sandbox for private companies to trial new offers safely and consulting on whether they should allow derogations of certain rules, which would mean companies could apply not to follow that rule if they could justify why they shouldn't. We also anticipate more third parties wanting to innovate using energy data to offer a service that may not be the traditional supply service. So that could include things like aggregation, building energy management systems, or tailored energy advice. These all will affect a person's energy bill and could require stronger rules to protect them and the market. The scope of regulation might need to increase as a result. So standards will also be needed to agree how technologies and services will meet the needs of the system. This is particularly the case for demand-side response and local optimization of energy use. These will have to protect for four main principles. One is cybersecurity, the second is grid stability. There's also the need for things to be interoperable and to protect data privacy. So standardization will also sort of be needed to compare some of these new market models that might come online, some of which might be very dependent on individual use and the qualities of your building. And that could be really difficult to understand if you don't have a standardized methodology to compare what those different benefits might be. So finally, I'd like to touch on some of our research and research from others. So our research indicates that new business models could have up to 81 different accessibility barriers, and some of the highest accessibility barriers include things like digital exclusion or living in the private rented sector. So removing those barriers will be essential to an inclusive market. Generally, consumers want financial guarantees and protections to help them engage, and on perceptions alone, people seem to like the model of peer-to-peer trading. So that's where you might generate energy within your home, but be able to sell that energy on to your neighbours or to other sort of community members. And people tended to like that on perceptions alone. But what we're finding from trials is that people also are successfully managing to shift their load when their energy is being managed by an external party. So I want to take a few minutes now just to summarise some of the changes that we're expecting to see in this market in the future. So the future market means installing new technologies in our homes and energy outcomes that aren't just confined to one energy supplier in one sector. There will also be more data that's fueling a lot of this change, and people might be expected to pay more cost-reflective tariffs. And offers might be packaged in bundles, or you might have multiple contracts and energy suppliers for one home, as well as local services. All the while, we may use energy for different reasons, for example, transport or heating or cooling. Um, and we'll have more companies playing in this market. And for all those situations, consumers should be informed, protected, and supported. In and what we have right now, these current protections just won't do that. So I'm going to bring it back to citizens' advice and what consumer protection means for us. So what you see in this picture is what a potential future home could look like and some of the new technologies that you might expect to see and new ways of engaging. And perhaps in other countries you might also see things like cooling devices too. And so whilst the home might change, what we're expecting is that there will still be the same questions that people ask today. And these are things like, what's the right energy deal for me? How do I pay less for the energy that I'm consuming? How do I solve my problems with like the energy supplier, and what support is available for me? And so whilst we'll have the same questions, the answers will look dramatically different in a future energy market. And it's really important that whatever those answers are, they're really simple and easy to navigate instead of the complicated answers that we expect if action isn't taken. So thank you for listening. I've got a few questions for you to think about now. So the first question is, how should you apply the learnings in this presentation to the energy system in Mexico? And the second question is, what challenges might there be for a digital energy system and how should we overcome them? So again, thank you for listening.